our time has come. Time's up, if you will. And women are stepping up. They're running for elected office. They have already made huge strides in terms of equal pay for equal work. They're executives. A lot of younger women have no idea what my generation went through to secure their place in the workforce. And so the question now is different, I think, than in the 1960s and 70s, when we were just trying to get a place at the table. Now the question can shift from, how do I get a place at the table, to what does it look like if this table is being crafted by women, Yeah. If this workplace is being crafted by women, if the way we give birth is being crafted by women. If we start to wonder, what does a woman of power look like? Not just following a male role model for what power looks like. Yeah. It might look very different, Yeah. And so what does it look like if women get back in touch with their intuition and their natural instincts and start following that in terms of how they give birth? And I think it would look very different. I think that, women would naturally seek a little cave in which to give birth, where it's dark and secluded, and they could feel safe and secure and like in a little nest, and people would come unobtrusively to be sure everyth's okay and to nurture them and take care of them, give them comfort measures, but without interfering with the process that's going on. And then the wildness can take over. The woman, it's part of being in the primitive part of the brain is letting go of inhibitions. And anything that interferes with a woman feeling comfortable enough to take off her clothes and shout, maybe curse, anything that interferes with that would just drop by the wayside, because that's how birth is. That's how birth is. Así es el parto, what they say in Spanish. So there's something about being able to look into the eyes of another woman who's given birth, who's been there, and she sees that you're really working hard, and every fiber of your being is challenged, but you see in her eyes, yes, así es el parto. This is what birth is like. You're okay, And that's what I think has been so hard for men to understand, that women going through this, it's okay, It's a major initiation for a woman. It's a major rite of passage for a woman to go through that. And you don't want to take it away from them, It's you don't want to interfere and shut down the natural process. You want to give her the sacred space to bring forth life in her own way. And the ways differ so greatly among different women, different cultural and religious backgrounds. But I think that individualization is also part of it. There's not a one size fits all. We've kind of like built all these rules around birth based on our culture's values. So for instance, if we believe that every birth is a potential operation, surgical intervention, then we give women IVs when they come into the hospital, and we tell them you can't eat or drink. It is a woman giving birth doesn't necessarily want to eat and drink a lot, but she needs little snacks to keep her energy up and keep going. She needs to keep hydrated. So in natural birth, we be sure that the mother has water and maybe little snacks of honey or crackers, you know. Sometimes in pushing stage, you just give a mother a spoonful of honey and her energy picks up, you know. So my daughter-in-law hit a wall in terms of her energy when she had an extended pushing stage and hadn't eaten or had anything to drink for over 20 hours, you know. That's not the way our natural instinct would be. We would grab a little something to keep our energy up, you know. So that's one example. And another is, you know, the procedures and the bright lights and the strangers coming and going in a hospital. That would probably not be a part of what we would choose, you know. We start with a natural sense of modesty and wanting to go apart and not feel observed, like, you know, with it, just the act of observing a woman giving birth. If you do it in a very obtrusive way, you walk in with a clipboard and you turn on the lights and you do fetal heart tones and you take blood pressures, pulls her out of that state, that timeless state of being, and can slow down or even, you know, interfere with the labor process. So I think caregivers, if they're aware of that, would do that very differently. They would keep the lights low, they would come in quietly, they would put a Doppler on the mom's tummy, would a blood pressure cuff, you know, and be completely tolerant of what the mother needs. If she needs to move around, empty her bladder, you know.
So she's in control.
So the mom is in control. Yeah. One thing that I developed as a midwife was a trust in mother's instinct, that she knows if things are okay or if they're not. And if I hear that tone of voice in a woman who's giving birth that says, something's not right here, I need to go to the hospital, we are out the door. On the other hand, if she's in the full beautiful, ecstatic moment of giving birth, but she's working so hard and every fiber of her being is challenged, and she says, I can't do this, I can't. That's the time to reassure her. Oh yes, you're doing it, babe. This is it. This is what birth is like. Because you're feeling this, the baby's probably coming momentarily, you know. And then I think there's another part of birth that in our desire to make birth more of a public event, you know, or not public, but, you know, where we feel like we need institutions and strangers to help with birth, we have maybe lost some other things that really are part of birth. The sexuality of birth, you know. As Ina May Gaskin and the farm midwives say, what helped put the baby in will help get the baby out. So at the farm, they encourage couples to go off by themselves and smooch and cuddle and be together, and that really gets the birth hormones going, you know. And even Dr. Odant uses a kind of scientific term. He calls it the fetus ejection reflex. But it's well known that there are some births where pretty much the baby just flies out, and, you know, within just a few pushes. And there are others where pushing goes on for hours and hours, and everyone commands you to push, 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 and you're trying to make it happen. But what if we can figure out how to stimulate the orgasmic response of the fetus ejection reflex and just get those babies out, you know? Just get maybe dancing, maybe, you know, drumming, maybe primal rhythms. I think it will come to us. It does come to us when we are given the freedom to do birth in our own way, to access the wild and the sacred. And that sacred part, I'm very fascinated with. I think we know very little about this how going into the timeless state of being or going to the moon, how that's like a necessary and essential part of birth. That in that state, all these hormones are working, and the mind has gotten out of the way, and it's like it's a divine setup for the soul of the baby, for this life before life, this being to come into physical form, and it's the baby and the mother are being showered with birth hormones. I want to say something more about the sacred part of birth, wild and sacred. And it relates to this question of paradigms. We live in a very materialistic society, but people are longing for the sacred. They're longing to understand more about life than just what's happening in the material world. And I think that there are parts of the mystery of birth that we are just really not honoring by having a very materialistic, automated, technologized system of birth. So when we were doing the Monroe Institute tapes to help women let go and go into an altered state, we found out that the tapes we were using were great for the first stage of labor, for helping a woman relax and helping her to experience birth as less painful. But when we got to the pushing stage, something more was needed. And so I started studying ecstatic states. My yoga practice was developing along this time, and my work as an intuitive healer. And I had begun to experience energy in my body in a way that I hadn't before. And I think that there are many names for this energy. I think one name is the Holy Spirit. I think another name is prana. The yogis talk about prana. I think another name is chi. The ancient Chinese talk about chi. So there, but there is an actual electrical sensation when you enter into an ecstatic state of consciousness. It's almost like our bodies are wired with 110 volt circuits, but we can transform that to 220 volts and experience this ecstatic divine energy in our bodies. I think that's what the mom who was speaking in tongues was doing. She was feeling the Holy Spirit energy in her body, and that's the same energy that's going to help get that baby out, So it's not just a physical, material process. We're getting into the realm now of the sacred, of spirit, of what many religious traditions claim as their own, and want their own framework in order to. It's such a powerful force, we want to somehow have a religious framework for it or a spiritual framework for it to help us know what to do with this. Some people call it Kundalini energy. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a mystery, a sacred mystery about giving birth that I think as we open up to this other side of birthing, this more spiritual side, we're going to encounter. Who knows exactly what's in play here? We are physical bodies. But we know that life begins with the breath of life. And it ends on the other side of the life spectrum with the last breath. And so what is it that happens when we take our first breath? Is that the moment when the soul unites with the physical body? And maybe there's an entire physiology that goes along with that. And when everything clicks into place and that spirit comes in, maybe through the mother, maybe directly to the baby, but we can feel it in the room. You know, we can feel it in the room. One of the last births that I attended, I had done all this physical training with yoga, with ecstatic trance, with my own spiritual path. And when the mother was about ready to give birth, I started feeling that energy in my own body, you know? And pretty soon we had a baby. So wouldn't it make sense that that same divine Holy Spirit energy is entering the physical body at that moment? And what can we do to honor that? It's a very sacred moment.